listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday. And Jeff, right before we began this conversation today, big-time breaking news out of the NFL that I want to address with you right off the top. And it is big news here, certainly from a defensive back standpoint, where the Pittsburgh Steelers have acquired Jalen Ramsey from the Miami Dolphins. I think a lot of people saw that Jalen was going to be moved from Miami. I think maybe the surprise comes in is that Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be moving back from Pittsburgh to Miami in this deal. What do you make of this swap of a corner for a safety?
So the best part of this deal, by the way, is that as the tweets keep coming out with news, there's more and more to the deal. So it started with first the tweet that Jalen Ramsey got traded. Right. Then it was Minkah Fitzpatrick was added to it. And now Jonnu Smith, the tight end, is also going to Pittsburgh. So as I have it right here, is Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh round pick to Pittsburgh. It changed from Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth round pick. So Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith to Pittsburgh, Fitzpatrick out at Pittsburgh. So this confirms a couple things, right? Confirms one, I think that from the Pittsburgh side, we heard rumblings that Minkah Fitzpatrick was the one guy on defense that wasn't really pulling his weight. Yes. And this, I think, confirms it. I mean, there was stuff from Kim Hayward about, we have 10 guys in one direction and one guy in the other direction. That one guy was theorized to be Fitzpatrick. And, very talented player, 3-time Pro Bowler, right? Like a good football player, clearly just didn't fit what Pittsburgh wanted to do defensively, and they ship him out. Now, I mentioned this with Jair Alexander going from, Green Bay and getting released and going to Baltimore. If you're releasing a player it's an impactful position like cornerback who your team needs, there's a reason why you're doing that, right? And that reason often is that player's not as good anymore for the money you're paying him. Now he goes to Pittsburgh and gets a bump in salary. He gets a little bit of a boost. And Pittsburgh's defense is just old. It's an older defense for the most part. Yeah, they drafted Derek Harmon. I get it. But the core players they have on this team are older. And it's a good, talented defense, Dave, but how long can an older defense like this last for an entire season? Again, the mindset of what Pittsburgh, I think they're doing this season, is they're very clearly just going all in right now. They're hoping Aaron Rodgers pays off in some magical rebirth season for him, where he magically becomes a player he's not anymore, which, again, we've seen it happen very sparingly in the NFL. It's not always the case. But their defense, right? Like Slay, right? Old, right? Older. Not, you can still play, but older. Ramsey, older, right? Hayward, TJ Watt, these are older players. And I do worry about just, can you win in the NFL at the way you want with all your veteran players being of that age? It doesn't seem to happen very much. A couple injuries here and there, and all of a sudden that depth is gone. But very clearly Pittsburgh is going all in right now for one season. It's not going to help. They're not going to win anything. It's not going to change their trajectory, in my opinion. But if that's what they're doing, I understand the aggressiveness. I just don't like and think it's going to work out in the end.
What do you make of the Jonnu Smith addition? Because we had heard rumors being linked to Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator there in Pittsburgh. Does that change things there for Aaron Rodgers, getting Jonnu and Arthur Smith thinking that's the way he normally likes to run his offenses? It might be tight end heavy.
What I can say is this. You can never have enough weapons on offense. So I never fault a team for going and getting more guys. I mentioned injuries on defense or the older players. Injuries happen on offense too. Having two tight ends, multiple wide receivers, multiple running backs, being difficult, I should say, for defense to guard you, right? If you have many different ways to beat a team, then defenses struggle figuring out ways to stop guys. If you can isolate Jonnu Smith on a linebacker, on a safety, put Freiermuth on someone else, and then you have, my free up options for Metcalf or Warner at the backfield. Like, having so many options, I think, helps an offense be multiple formations, multiple personnel groups, gives defenses different looks. So, they didn't give up much, right? They gave up what I mentioned, a 2027 seventh round pick for this. So I like that perspective. I like the perspective of having more options offensively, which should allow Pittsburgh the ability to find different targets. Now, it comes down to Rodgers being able to do that and protecting him and whatnot. But I don't fault, throwing a tight end here. From the other side of this, though, what is Miami doing? It feels like, I don't know if the market is up yet for first coach fired, but Mike McDaniel's got to be up there, right? I mean, I just don't know how he makes it out of this season. They keep getting worse. He's had an inability to adjust throughout the years, right? He's been good to start seasons, and when things are good, it's good. When it's bad, it gets really bad. There's no really getting out of it. It does feel like this is a situation where McDaniel is just not going to have this job next year. They're not a talented football team anymore as they were in the past. They're 2 injury away from winning 4 or 5 games. It feels like they're in a bad spot right now. If you're a Dolphins fan or one of the coaching staff there, it feels like their coaching staff is going to be gone after the season. Put it like that.
It does. I don't want to say they're waving the white flag before it ever begins, but when you see some of these moves, you kind of go, boy, it feels like they are not visions of grandeur this year. They do not have those. By the way, staying in Pittsburgh for a second, because Aaron Rodgers did come out on the Pat McAfee show and say that a big reason why he actually signed with Pittsburgh was DK Metcalf, that they made that trade to get DK. He talks about when he works out early in the morning. DK is that type of guy that's always there as well. What do you make of that? Is that just like, hey, I'm putting up, I want my new guy to know that he's the reason why I'm here. Do you think it's as simple as that Rodgers looked at the weapons and say, hey, you give me DK Metcalf, and that's where I'll go?
What connection do they have? I don't really. Do they play catch in the offseason? I mean, it's certainly possible. These guys all cross-pollinate, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like something just nice to say about each other. I think they have thrown together before. But I mean, again, these guys go in the offseason and throw together. I think it's more just something nice to say about a player that you're playing with. I don't think it was a demand that he actually, he actually needed him to sign there.
Right. It wasn't a DK or bust scenario to go to Pittsburgh, but they are there in Pittsburgh, and now Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith also in Pittsburgh. Very quickly, it was interesting news in the last week about the NFL and the Deshaun Watson deal, and that maybe collusion from that point forward, Jeff, where they said, hey, we're not going to give anybody else this type of guaranteed money that we gave to Deshaun Watson. But, Jeff, ultimately, hard to prove a collusion case like that. What do you make of that with the league? That basically it might be a wink, wink. That was a really bad contract that the Browns did. We're going to make sure we don't do that going forward. What's your take on that?
So this story was interesting because I think all the players believe that the NFL owners are out to screw us. And whether it's legal or not, that's the way it always feels. And they're 32 like-minded individuals, right? Like they think all together, and the players have 1,700 different voices. And that's why there's a little bit of fracture, I think, when it comes to these negotiations. But nonetheless, we don't have guaranteed money, right? Deshaun Watson gets this contract that's so out of the ordinary. Only up to that point, I believe Kirk Cousins was the only quarterback that had gone a guaranteed contract. So Deshaun Watson, off all the allegations, off the tray, gets this monster contract. And when it happened, a lot of us said, that's not going to happen going forward. I mean, none of us believed that deal was now the standard for that position, because most of the time, right, what happens in these negotiations is the next guy up gets the next biggest amount of money.
Sure.
So if you make $10 and I get hired, I make $11, the next guy up is making $12, right? And that's the way it's always been. So it would be presumed that next guy after Deshaun Watson, which was Lamar and Kyler Murray and Herbert, would just get guaranteed contracts. I think Russell Wilson was throwing that as well. We'll get guaranteed contracts. And I think at the time we all thought this is not a chance it's going to happen. Well, now we have proof that the NFL Management Council told everyone, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Like that was a one-time deal. And what's interesting too is that the NFLPA lost the case because the arbiter ruled that there's no way to prove without reasonable doubt that the owners actually took the advice, because the next contracts up were basically commiserate to the rest of the NFL contracts. The Watson was like an outlier, right? So the thing that I just don't get from a player's perspective is like why the NFLPA did not make this a bigger deal. I know they lost they lost the arbitration, but you could have made this a big stink. Hey guys, look, we've said for years the NFL is colluding. And they're actually doing it. Now, can we all prove it in the end? No, but public opinion matters, right? And players putting pressure on the owners and in lawsuits and whatnot. I mean, there could be lawsuits that, that theorize that Lamar Jackson could end up just suing the NFL and say, hey, man, like you colluded against me getting guaranteed contracts. So that part of it's really interesting. I don't know why the PA didn't go forward with that. I've been frustrated over the years with PA leadership. Again, I understand the hard part about it, that there are all these different voices in the room. We don't feel very unified. And the one thing that I think the NFLPA has to change, and I take this cue from other sports leagues, they have their stars in positions of power in their players' associations. Baseball, not as much anymore. Basketball is still that way. But for years, Chris Paul was like the head of the NFL, the NBA Players Association. Max Scherzer was in charge of the Baseball Players Association. J.C. Treader is a fine human. I like him, a former offensive lineman. But imagine if Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, like these top quarterbacks took charge of the Players Association. I think we'd have different outcomes when it came to CBA negotiations. There are different outcomes when it comes to some of these issues. And I just wish that some of the better players would lead our PA. It's probably never going to happen, but I think it would end up with better results for all the players.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, again, I remember Lorenzo Alexander, loved so dearly from our days in D.C. He was
great.
part of the NFL, right?
Yeah.
But Lorenzo is not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes.
Correct.
He's
Yes.
as good of an accomplished player as he is and was in his playing days. Your point's well taken that if you had a major superstar of your time in real time, leading that, maybe some of these decisions would be different with the league and with the NFLPA. I think it's a very salient point that you make going forward for the NFLPA. Speaking of going forward, when we come back, I wonder if we're going forward in the AFC West with a tradition, which is as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are quarterback and coach, will they win the division again? Let's start to break down the hierarchy of the AFC West, and it starts with the Chiefs. That is next, right here on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday. Going to start breaking down the AFC West, Jeff. And obviously, when we do that, it starts with the team that never loses the division. At least they've never lost it with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, that 1-2 combination. Before we break down this year's version of the Chiefs, there is an interesting story about the Chiefs requesting an extension to an end of this month, June, now into July, for a stadium financing package from the state itself, the state of Kansas. Obviously, this has ties with the Royals, not just the Chiefs. Jeff, I always say, like, these types of small moves, we can't imagine the Chiefs not being in Kansas City. But I'm sure you could ask St. Louis Rams fans that, Baltimore Colts fans that, Oakland Raider fans that. We've seen this happen throughout the history of the league. Does this raise an antenna at all if they're looking for help from the state to finance a new stadium type deal?
So right now they play in Missouri, right? Arrowhead Stadium. It's right there. That's a Kauffman Stadium. It's a complex, right? And it's an old stadium, 1970s, but it's the best, right? It has that vibe of just you're there for football. It's very loud, obviously, tough place to play, intimidating environment. They've won a lot. Danny Reid's come. And they won a lot before that. They just didn't win Super Bowls, right? And obviously, Kauffman Stadium is there with the Royals, who won a championship 10 years ago. It's a great little place to tailgate. You got a big old parking lot between those two things. And I'm of the opinion that the stadium does not need upgrades. Like, the fans that are going to the stadium are going there to watch football, and it's a great place to watch football. And there's enough amenities there. Now, if I'm an owner, right, the owners want, and I'm dealing with Charlotte right now with David Tepper, is they want all the events. They want the concerts, the Final Fours, the soccer tournaments, and you get that with a dome, right? And I think a dome for football is terrible. If you live in a state, okay, or you play in a state, I should say, where the weather is nice, you don't get a dome. You don't, even the weather is bad, no domes whatsoever. Everyone outside, and preferably on grass, outside, no dome. But I get why the owners want it. They want these events. And so right now, they're pitting the states against each other, right? They're trying to find the state that'll give them the most financing. Hey, Kansas, we'll take your package. No, Missouri, we'll take your package. So it feels like if Missouri's the spot, they're going to renovate the stadium as is, I think. Kansas, it feels like brand new stadium, dome and everything. And like when you think about the stadiums that are adding these domes, I don't know how many you've been to, it's such a sterile environment. Like there used to be in some of them, and I've been to Minneapolis in the Metro Dome. I've been to the new Dallas one. Like some of the, it's very sterile. It just doesn't feel like the vibe is not there of gritty football and just sort of the scar tissue of a stadium has been there forever. And so I don't like it. I get why owners want to do it. But can you imagine the Chiefs playing inside on turf? And so that's where we're going though, right? The Browns want a dome stadium, right? Buffalo's getting a dome stadium. No, Buffalo's not, correct? Buffalo's doing it correctly. They're not getting a dome stadium.
They are not, but so Cleveland is. They've already signed off on that. It's going to be 4 years from now. Cleveland's getting one.
Is Chicago getting a dome stadium? Have they figured out their stadium situation as well?
I mean, it seems sacrilegious, but again, we thought Detroit that for older Lion fans, they never thought they'd be playing in a Pontiac, Michigan, the Silverdome, or Vikings fans, as you mentioned now. Now, I'm sure Viking fans can't imagine the way they did it back in the Fran Tarkenton days of playing outdoors in the cold. And oh, by the way, they went to 4 Super Bowls in that tenure. So I can't imagine the Chiefs going to a dome. But again, we can't imagine it until it actually happens sometimes. That would be interesting if Kansas is playing it against Missouri to get the Chiefs. But when they ask for funding from the state of Kansas, that's when my antenna would go up if I'm a Chiefs fan.
It would. I am of the opinion that owners should pay for their own stadiums. So you have billions of dollars, you can finance it. You don't need taxpayer money to do so. It's your stadium, right? I know we get to use it as fans, but you get to host the events, right? You get to make the money off of it. You should pay for it. It's a simple look. David Tepper is worth $10 billion. He can afford to finance his own stadium here in Charlotte. I shouldn't have to pay for his stadium. So I've been of that opinion for a while now. And if you want to make it happen, go do it. I believe what Stan Kroenke paid for his whole stadium himself, correct? Am I right on that? In SoFi? I believe he did.
Because the people of St. Louis, actually, if memory serves, were still going to be, that was not an issue. It was Kroenke just wanted to go for his new Taj Mahal in LA, and it is beautiful and all those things. But that was not a case of like the fans not supporting the team anymore. Yeah. So you're right. Like certain cities, the fans voted down, like in Oakland. That's why the Raiders eventually moved, right? They actually had a proposal that the fans voted against. So they said, all right, fine, I'm going to take my team and move it to Las Vegas. So different things here. This will be interesting to see exactly what they're trying to do financially here and see which state will pay for it if the owner is not going to pay for it themselves. Speaking of those Chiefs, they are the team to beat. Once again, I mentioned it, Reed, Mahomes, they've never lost a division as long as Patrick's been the starting quarterback. Not a big number to pay here on the Chiefs to repeat as champions. A 15-win team a year ago, their win total was down to 11.5. Yeah. Jeff, it feels like the market is anticipating a regression from the Chiefs. Do you see it that way?
I do not. Minus 120 to win the division is very cheap. It's the cheapest price you've gotten in 8 years, right? Essentially. Here's why I still buy the Chiefs. So at the end of last season, I thought Travis Kelce was going to retire. And I thought this was going to be a reset year for Kansas City. They lost the Super Bowl. He comes back. So they're still in win now mode, right? When Travis is there, you're in win now mode. You absolutely are. So think about it. They upgrade their offensive line. Huge problem last year. And there's talk that Josh Emmett, drafted in the first round, is going to be healthy enough to start the season. We'll see in reality. But the offensive line is better. Still have Travis Kelce. And I get it. Mahomes, the numbers were down last year. He threw a lot of short passes. But he started the season last year with Rashee Rice healthy for 3 games. And Rashee was great. Fantastic. Look at almost 30 catches in 3 games. Then he gets hurt. Xavier Worthy's a rookie last season. Hollywood Brown was not healthy. All 3 of those guys are starting the year healthy right now. So you have a full complement of offense and a better offensive line. They're going to be good on offense. Defensively, they're still very talented. Like they're good. They're going to be good defense. Are they have to be the best defense ever? No. But they're going to be good. And they're motivated by losing last year. They're motivated by people saying the Chiefs are not what they used to be. They're motivated. They love that stuff, right? Because as a team that wins a lot, you sometimes need external motivation, right? You can't always motivate yourself. And the schedule, it's hard every year. This is nothing new for Kansas City. They have a first place schedule each and every season. So yeah, they get the Chargers, the Eagles, they got the Giants though, the Baltimore. And being able to play the AFC South is super important this season. So you do have Jacksonville, you do have Indy on there. I think they're going to be just fine as usual. They're going to win 10 to 12 games. They're going to win the division. And look, will they have a home game? I don't know. I think Buffalo probably wins the AFC number 1 seed, but they're going to be right in the mix, man. I don't get the people down in Kansas City.
We talk a lot about what do you need more of? Do you need, is it the players or is it the coaching staff? I think when you can get the confluence of both of those, that's when you win championships, when you have great players and a great coaching staff. I think we look at this coaching staff as great, if not the best. When you're looking at Spags and you're looking at Andy Reid, with those players coming back, Jeff, that you mentioned, and with that brain trust in hand, is there a reason to doubt why they might not be able to make a strong push for 4 straight Super Bowl appearances? I mean, if they're going to be better talent-wise, I don't doubt the brain trust at all. I don't know why people are anticipating this fall off.
Well, I think they saw the Super Bowl and they saw what happened. Remember, though, they got blown out by the Bucs and made it back to the AFC Championship game, right? So they look at Mahomes and they see his numbers, at least his deep passing, falling off a little bit. But again, I mentioned Rashee Rice played well, got hurt. And after that, the wide receivers were Xavier Worthy, a bunch of dudes. When Hollywood Brown came back, when Worthy got better as a rookie, the offense looked a little bit differently. You're entering the season with all these guys health. Now, the one thing that's still on the mind, for me at least, is Rashee Rice's suspension at some point. It's going to happen, I think. And then you lose him for a certain amount of time. But hopefully you get him back for the postseason, right? So I think they would much prefer to know the suspension now and deal with it now than get it dropped in week 4. Hey, he's out for 8 weeks. But nonetheless, that's the way the NFL works. I like the draft pick in Royal. I like what they did this offseason. So they're still going for it. They know how to win these close games. Super important, right? It's not always going to happen that way. We know that has regression, but they keep winning these close games because they know how to win in those moments. And they kind of play with their food a lot as well. But look, minus 120, man, you're just not getting a better price ever until this team as we know it, I think, breaks up and becomes something else.
In the next segment, we'll come back and look at the other 3 teams in this division because I do think it's an interesting pecking order behind Kansas City, okay? But when you see that win total 11.5, that's what you're also going to find when you look at the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, right? These are the 3 elite teams that we've all identified here in the AFC. Mm-hmm. Out of those top 3, Jeff, going into this year, how would you rate the big 3 of the AFC with the Chiefs, Ravens, and the Bills?
Well, the Bills just have essentially 6 division wins. I mean, it might not be that easy for them, right? But like that, right. That's a pretty big help, right? To play that division. And then they also have the NFC South. So I'm looking at the Bills schedule right now. I mean, look, they're first. It's Baltimore, Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots, Falcons, Panthers. Oh, I mean, 6-2. Now Buffalo does have a tendency to have one of those games once a year when they're 21-point favorites and they lose. And you're like, what is happening with Buffalo right now? But like that, I mean, you're looking at 6 wins before you get to the Chiefs and then the Dolphins, Bucks. It's a schedule that feels pretty clearable for Buffalo. So that's why schedule matters, man. They have an easier schedule than Kansas City. So I lean toward Buffalo having the 1 seed. They're a good team. They're due. Look, due is not really a fair way to analyze anything. But they are due to be the AFC participant in the Super Bowl. Like it's time for them to happen. I thought it would have happened sooner than this. It can't be the Chiefs in the postseason. They're close. It's not like they get blown out. It feels like Buffalo's been building to this moment, and this might be their year finally.
Yeah, week 1 game there. And again, we'll figure out if it is those same 3 teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore. That week 1 matchup there on Sunday night between the Ravens and the Bills could have long-term implications. Whoever gets off on the good foot there. All right, when we come back, Chiefs clearly number 1. Who's 2, 3, and 4? We'll go through the rest of the pecking order, and it might surprise you with what the bookmakers are saying should be the second best team in the AFC West. That is next when you come back with us right here on the GM Shuffle.
listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday. Of course, the Chiefs are the team to be in the AFC West as we continue our breakdown of every single division in the NFL. Cannot wait for the season to begin, but we got a long way to go, Jeff. When you look at the Broncos, they had a long way to go. And they look like they've closed the gap here rather quickly since Sean Payton's arrival in the Mile High City. Now, according to the bookmakers at least, they are projected to be the second best team in this division. 10 wins a year ago, playoff berth a year ago. Their win total now is 9.5, which means 10 wins again. If they do that from a year ago, would get you that over. Is juiced slightly to the under at minus $1.15. What do you make of what they've done year one with Bo Nix, year two with Sean Payton, as they enter years 3 and 2 respectively from quarterback and head coach?
Well, year one with a quarterback is about sort of finding limitations, right? And ending that first season knowing what a guy can and cannot do. I feel like they had that pretty well noted, right? We saw the offense evolve. There's still room, I think, for Bo Nix to grow as a quarterback, to be more confident as a passer, to find a little bit more of a traditional passing attack that works every single game. And there were some games, obviously, we know that the pass attack was more play action pass, move the pocket, easy throws, and there weren't sort of those deep passes all the time available, deep to intermediate passes. And so I think they found where he was at in year one and can grow into year two. But what they did find out, which is important in the end, was that Bo Nix can win football games in National Football League, right? Yep. Now you build a team around Bo Nix, right? And I really they didn't have to do much in free agency or the draft offensively. It's a young offense for the most part. They were able to fill some holes here and there, but the offense is going to be what it was last year, right? Except you hope there's growth from Bo Nix. Defensively, they added some in free agency, they added some in the draft. Like the defense, I think could be one of the best in the NFL. Like, it was good last season. It might be better this season. And I think that's why there's optimism where the team around Bo Nix is good. And if Bo Nix can give you a last year plus 10, 15% more, it's a team that will be in every game, a team that can compete with anyone in the National Football League, which, again, they almost beat Kansas City, block kick to win that game for the Chiefs. And so I think you feel pretty good if you're the Broncos now that your sort of build after Russell Wilson has gone like you wanted to.
You do add J.K. Dobbins, Trent Sherfield, wide receiver, and also Evan Ingram, who's had some pretty good years in the NFL as well. When you see those type of moves here, kind of, I don't want to say secondary, but Sherfield's not going to jump off the page, but he does feel like a big play guy. It seems to show up here and there. But Ingram is interesting in tight end position. And then Dobbins, are they kicking the tires on a guy like J.K. Dobbins, or do they really think that Sean Payton can use him as a bell cow?
Well, remember last year they had such a running back rotation that I think it's unhealthy to have a rotation like that. I think that's so. No, I'm looking right now. So Javonte Williams had 139 carries, McLaughlin had 113, Estime had 76, Bo Nix had 92. And the run game, from what I've seen, for the most part, 70% one guy, 30% the backup, right? Because you need to be able to get in a rhythm with your offensive line, with the play caller. And it only happens if you carry the ball enough to understand. Like if you run a play in the first quarter with the same running back, right? Doesn't go as well, gets 1 or 2 yards, but you see what the look is. You run that in the third quarter again, you might know what's coming, and you get 5, 6, 7, 8 yards. If it's the second running back, you don't have that feel, right, Dave? Like you don't have that knowledge of that play that happened early in the game with that same guy. So I think one guy's how they would like to do it. Maybe Dobbins, that guy. I mean, look, RJ Harvey feels like they dropped him in the second round for a reason. That feels like the guy they would like to be their sort of bell cow running back. But what makes the offense, what makes the run game work is the offensive line is decent, right? I mean, that really makes a big difference. When your offensive line is good, you allow yourself to be able to rotate these running backs in. But in their offense at times, again, goes back to protecting Bo Nix, which I'm not sure is the best version of any offense, is protecting a quarterback. But with all the pieces around him, you're allowing yourself to have that protection for Nix. But when it matters the most, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 4th down, the situations that are on the quarterback, is Bo Nix good enough to make those situations winning situations for the Broncos?
So it is veteran laden there from the backup roles that I mentioned there offensively. Also, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga comes over as well from the safety position from San Francisco. He was dinged up too. When you see those two veterans specifically from the Niners, Greenlaw and Hufanga, what do you make of that? In that Sean Payton is going to go older, but probably two veterans he really trusts when they're healthy.
Well, you saw last year when Hufanga was in and out of lineup, the difference in the Niners defense. It was much better with him in, worse with him out. But they also added the youth, right? I mean, they brought in Barron and they drafted Surtain is incredible at corner. So it looks like they're back in their secondary. They have Surtain, Hufanga, Barron. Like, it's really good. Greenlaw, again, injured last season, got him in the Super Bowl, right? Didn't play much last year, but we know what he can do on the field. I mean, it's a good defense. Like, I think people might not pay attention to Broncos very much, but Dave, it's a legitimately top caliber defense in the National Football League. They could contend, I think, this year. We look up and say that's the best defense in all of football.
I'm a little bit surprised that the Chargers feel like great year one with Jim Harbaugh and company last year. Again, a playoff berth, didn't go well in the postseason, but they did win 11 games last year. Their win total is also 9.5, same as Denver. But it does feel like that pecking order behind Kansas City. It's nip tuck here with the Chargers and the Broncos. What do you make now with Herbert, Harbaugh, year two for that duo? We mentioned moving on from J.K. Dobbins. They're going to go younger, certainly with Hampton for their first round pick at running back as well. What do you make of what the Chargers are trying to do?
So I'm a Justin Herbert guy. I don't know if I'm an Oregon dog, and what he did for Oregon was. I said from the beginning I thought he would be good in the NFL, and he has been. But you look at the playoff game last year. Obviously, not all his fault, but not great. You look at what happened 2 years ago in Jacksonville, and while that's not always defining your career, it's only 2 games, tiny sample size. I think people look at the Chargers and think to themselves, are they going to get over that hurdle of the postseason? And the last thing we saw of them, same with Kansas City, right, was Chiefs got their butts kicked in the playoffs the last time we saw them. Same with the Chargers. And that's, I think the concern is, like, are they going to have the same result this season with essentially most of the same roster? They've added, I had a Hampton who I have a rookie of the year ticket on, I think 16-1. I mean, he's going to get a ton of carries this year. He's going to be 1,000 yards ish or more. Got to compete with Genti, obviously, in your own division for that award. But I like the value there. Are they explosive enough on offense? And then again, I love Herbert, but sometimes it does feel like there's something a little bit missing from his game, and I'm excited to see him with better wide receivers, which I think with Johnson year 2, 3 now, right? We saw what McConkey did last season. They added a couple guys in the draft this year in the second round. So I think those are questions with the Chargers. We know what style of team they're going to be. A Harbaugh team is going to be physical, relentless, full of effort. And I think we're just waiting to see that little bit more from Herbert, because he's talked about like a great, and he has that talent, but he's not there yet. I think, Dave, that's why people sometimes get a little bit afraid to put the Chargers as division winners or AFC contenders in a way that we do other teams.
I think it's a very fair point. Who's not a fan of Justin Herbert and his talent? I see it the same way you do, though. Like, at some point, that's great, but it's got to manifest itself in 2 bad playoff losses to 2 teams I think they feel like they were better than, certainly in Jacksonville and Houston last year. And you don't get either one of those done. At some point, you start to go, okay, regular season is great, but that's not why we're playing this game. We're playing it to get it done in the second season, and that means everybody's going to have to be better. Najee Harris comes over from Pittsburgh in the offseason as well. They re-signed Mike Williams. He comes back after his Backel time there in Pittsburgh and the Jets as well. Tyler Conklin is going to be brought in as well. Mekhi Becton comes in on that offensive line. It does feel like they've gone, I don't want to say on the cheap, because Harris, they did give some real guaranteed money too. But what do you make of those veteran moves here? It feels like these are guys that Harbaugh feels like he trusts because they're pros, and maybe it didn't always work out at other places, but he's going to try to forge this thing to really work around another young running back, as you mentioned, in Hampton coming in, and then a bunch of veterans around him.
Well, you have to have depth. That's part of winning in the national football. Injuries are going to happen 100%, and you want guys to add depth. You bring in Becton, who was basically a throwaway from the Jets, goes to Philly, wins a championship. So bringing that championship mindset to that offensive line is going to be huge. You have Alt and Slater, and you're building something really great with those guys. To add Becton to that, it's a big offensive line, man. I mean, Becton and Joe Alton. We thought Lane and Becton were huge in Philly. Alton and Becton are together. Najee Harris just feels like a veteran, right? I mean, I think his production last year, kind of dropped off. Again, the last season, he's an older player, but bringing him in and just, again, having some veterans there is never a bad thing. But again, these guys are not all starting. The veterans are there for depth and to provide leadership and provide some leadership and things to fall back on. And I like adding those pieces if they're not always going to be your starters. Like Pittsburgh, we talked about them earlier. They're adding all these older guys that are good, we think, to be starters. It's a lot of old guys. So I like adding those pieces in to be veterans and to lead some of these younger football players.
And very quickly here, when you look at what Harbaugh did in year one, are you surprised, or no, you kind of expected he'd come in, get the thing going, turn it around, playoffs year one? I'm sure that's the way they're thinking going into year two.
Every place he's been has won. I mean, why is this a surprise? Everywhere he's been, San Diego, Stanford was a historically bad team when he showed up. He changed the program. Michigan, right? Hadn't won a championship in how many years? 40 years. Comes in there and goes to the playoff. It took him a little bit of time, but it happened. The Niners, right? Got very close to winning the Super Bowl. Everywhere he has been, he has won. There's no surprise. Look, when you win by trying to beat up your opponent, you always have a chance to win every single game. As the Chargers do. You can never be wrong building to punch someone in the mouth. That's what Harbaugh has always done, and it pays off. And I'll tell you what, we're 32 days away from the Hall of Fame game, Dave. Chargers and Lions. That's two coaches that are going to play to the exact whistle. The very last whistle of any game will be that Hall of Fame game. Like, they're going to be great. It's what those coaches do, right? When you win that way, or when you prepare that way, you have a chance to win every game.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here. Jeff, I love picking your brain as a lineman who knows exactly what the head coaches, certainly veteran head coaches, what they're trying to get the most out of new teams. And that gets us to the last team here, at least on paper, in the AFC West this year. And that's Pete Carroll. Now, look, as a player, I wonder what your vibe would be with old man Pete coming in to try to resurrect this thing here in the desert. I know for me, as a media guy covering some older coaches in my day, guys like Marty Schottenheimer, when I had him in Washington, D.C., Joe Gibbs 2.0, when he came back to coach the Redskins at that time. I loved, and I could tell a change immediately when people of that cachet just walked into the building at Redskins Park back in the day. And I even, to a degree, Mike Shanahan, when he came in there too. When Pete Carroll comes in here to Las Vegas, and if we're being honest, really trying to start a new culture with the Las Vegas Raiders, is he the right guy, Jeff, in your mind as a player to be able to do that?
So teams often hire the opposite of what they had. Raiders went young with coach, and they went opposite, right? Super old, established coach that won at USC and won at Seattle that might have lost his touch in Seattle. But he doesn't act 72, however old he doesn't act that way, right? And so that's the most important thing, right? I think players will respect him. Like the players that are in the NFL now, I mean, they remember the USC teams, right? They remember the early Seahawks teams he had. They know those things. And having a proven winner come in, immediately players buy into that, right? There's it's harder to sell your message when you haven't won before. Now, players believe it early in your tenure. I've been around coaches that were new OCs or new head coaches that, hey, trust me on this. And you do trust them early on. But when Pete Carroll says it, he's got the rings. Hey, I got the ring to back it up, right? Like, I've done this before at a high level. And so immediately players buy in to what he's selling. Now, if you don't win, obviously, that buy-in lessens, but early on, they're going to. And I talked about the physicality part of it, right? When it comes to Harbaugh and Dan Campbell and Pete Carroll has always tried to win with physicality. And that is a selling point that leads to success. Now, do they have the team right now to do that? Defensive line, yes, they do. They brought in a bunch of guys at linebacker to try to shore up that, to shore up that part of the defense. Also in the back end of the secondary, which happens with a new coach, a new GM. They shuffle through the lineup, as we know, right? The question I have is offensive line. This is why I wanted them to address the offensive line. Instead of drafting Ashton Jeanty, they could have drafted a running back in the second round. You drafted this offensive line. You drafted Jeanty, who I think is great, but I'm not sure the offensive line matches what you're hoping to get out of the run game, what you're hoping to get from Geno. That's my concern. Is the offensive line and really wide receiver. Like, you have Bowers, incredible wide receiver. It's a lot of drafted guys, a lot of veteran guys. So I like Pete Carroll. I like what he's done in the past. I think he will bring that energy and that winning vibe to Vegas. I'm not sure their roster is good enough to compete with the rest of the division.
And I think my question for you would be this too, especially if you're playing O-line. And the first thing that Pete Carroll does is he trades for Geno Smith. And by the way, it wasn't cheap. They gave up a third-round pick to go get Smith, and they gave him a 2-year extension at pretty sizable money, $66.5 million guaranteed. So this isn't 10 years ago, Geno. They gave up in 2025 a third-round pick to get him out of Seattle. What does that tell you about Pete and Geno and their relationship in Seattle, that he made sure it was a day one priority to carry that over in Las Vegas?
Well, I think you have to look at what was available. What was available for the Raiders? Maybe the draft, and we saw Shedeur Sanders fall like a rock. So they're out on Shedeur. So what were the options? Was it Sam Darnold? Probably not. So he knows Geno. He trusts Geno. Trust is important, right? Coaches and front office personnel, they want to trust you. You play a long time in the NFL. I'm one of those guys. I was injured a bunch. It wasn't a superstar. Played 8 years because I was trustworthy. They trusted me when they put me in the game. I wasn't going to screw up. They trust Geno Smith, and trust is important here. Now, I think Geno's not as good as people want him to be. I think they love the redemption story about Geno, but he was good for about 8 weeks. His first couple of weeks, his first couple of months in Seattle, has not been the same player since. But there were no other options. It was either go with no quarterback in year one, essentially, right? Just try to stink, which I don't feel like fits Pete Carroll's MO. Or was go find a veteran. They got the guy they trust and they know. I'm really fascinated by Chip Kelly. So Chip Kelly was my offensive coordinator in Oregon, obviously long time ago, because that was in 2007, his first year. His offense has evolved many times over. It's just evolved. It evolved with the Niners, with the Eagles, with Ohio State, with UCLA. He's a run first most of the time. Tons of formations. Geno probably will not be asked to do as much, which might be good. He'll be asked to hit some home runs. He'll be asked to spread the ball around a little bit. But I'm really fascinated by Chip back in the NFL. He's not a head coach, as we know. He's the OC here. His offense has seen many different iterations. And I'm just very curious what the offense looks like with Chip running the show. I'm rooting for Chip. I love Chip. So I'm a Chiefs fan, but I hope that the Chip has success in Vegas.
He's another guy that I go, there's a disconnect between fan bases, media, and then maybe players that played for him and people in the know. There's a reason why he goes to Ohio State as their offensive coordinator, has success. You know it firsthand, playing for him at Oregon, the tremendous amount of success he had there. Let's be honest, he had success with Philadelphia early on in his tenure there with the Eagles. I know it didn't end the way they wanted to end. But when I see that Pete Carroll comes in and brings in Chip Kelly, that he's bringing in a lot of veteran, not just players, but on that coaching staff too, that like we're getting the band together here. And these are trustworthy people, at least in Pete's eyes. This is what it feels like to me, Jeff, from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
I trust Chip Kelly. I trust Geno Smith. I trust some of these veterans.
Yeah.
And we're going to mount it up and turn this culture around quickly.
Yeah. So one thing about when you think about hires sometimes, think about it like this. So Pete Carroll's a defensive guy, right? And most of the time when you're an offensive defensive coach, you spend practice time with that side of the ball. So often you will hire someone to coach the other side of the ball that has coaching experience. So like Chip Kelly can run the offense without Pete Carroll having to hover over him at practice. And Pete Carroll can run the team. I mean, I watched this with Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid ran the offense. He called the offensive plays. And his defensive coordinators, Bob Sutton, Steve Spagnuolo, these guys that have been long-time coaches that he doesn't have to worry about. You handle defense. I do offense. I do the overarching stuff. So Pete Carroll in practice can focus on the defense. Chip can do the offense. This is a way a lot of coaches will operate who call play. I'm not sure Pete Carroll calls plays of defense anymore, but the idea is that you have this head coach figure on offense, and I can worry about what I know best, doing defensive practice.
Oh, I'll tell you this. If Pete Carroll is the figurehead coach, sign me up. That means he's got his units, and that's the perfect guy to be the overseer there if he trusts his coordinators, and certainly he's going to trust Chip Kelly to run that offense. Look at some of the divisional odds, and we mentioned it. Kansas City's the favorite at -20. The Broncos are 3-1 to win it. Chargers nipper to their heels at +310. Las Vegas is the extreme long shot at 20-1. To make the playoffs, you'd have to lay almost $4 to win $1 back on Kansas City. That's how big of a shoe-in we believe, unless they have injuries, to make the postseason. What about the longer shots? And the Vegas, the Raiders out here are +330. You got to lay $1.40 with the Chargers and $1.20 with the Broncos. Could this really be another two wild cards in the division champ? Obviously, could this be a 3 playoff team division again?
Well, let's think about the rest of the divisions. The AFC East is getting one team in, right? As we know. The South is probably getting one. The question is the North, right? Is how many are coming in from the North? So I 3 doesn't feel unlikely, right? And we got 3 last year, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah. Got in the Chargers.
But the Bengals are a little bit better than you knock one of those guys out. So, man, it's so hard. I mean, Chiefs are in the playoffs, and then it's between Chargers and Broncos. I would probably, I probably lean Broncos. I think they have the better team, but the better quarterback is Herbert, which makes it difficult to bet against the better quarterback because a lot of times the best quarterbacks all make the playoffs, Bengals notwithstanding last season. It's a really tough call. I haven't put money on that. I'm not sure I will because I think it's just a difficult call. I mean, they're very good. It's come down to some weird play to end a game, a fumble here and there, bad turnover luck, an injury for a couple of weeks. That's how it will unfold for the 2 and 3 seeds.
If we don't know exactly which, if any of those teams get in as wild cards, I know you like the Chiefs to win the division. Instead of laying the $1.20, could I interest you on plus money if you get a division exacta? Kansas City 1, you could pick your 2 out of the other 3 teams, Jeff. You tell me who the 2 is if you really like Kansas City to win, and I'll tell you the number you can get at plus money if you're convinced Kansas City is going to win this division.
Well, I don't want to cheap. I am looking at the screen right now, but I think that the thing that I think is so fascinating about this though is the price is basically the same.
Yeah.
For any of the ones with Denver and Los Angeles, it's
right.
basically the same. So I think I would pick Denver and lay the, it's not, I guess I'm not laying, but plus 340 here. So I take that. I take that widget. Yeah.
Okay. Kansas City 1, Denver 2 is plus 340. To your point, the Chargers, if it's Kansas City Chargers, plus 350. If it's somehow Kansas City and Las Vegas,
no chance.
I don't think no chance.
Don't waste your money. Just don't do it.
Okay. It's going to be an interesting division now with the old man Pete there to join the coaching ranks of the AFC West. Jeff, appreciate the conversation as always, my friend. We'll do it again next week right here on the GM Shuffle.